Welcome Wargamers, my name is Doug, and I'm excited to cover a whole bunch of new units that have been added to the Hedonites of Slaanesh Battle Tome. Now, I did a whole series of videos dedicated to the Hedonites before, but at the time, the faction was almost entirely made up of demonic units. And honestly, none of their lore really changed at all. So if you want a fuller picture of what's going on in this faction, head over to the playlist in the description down below because these are going to bolt right on. These are videos specifically about the mortal units that were added to the faction. A few new lore elements were added, but honestly nothing terribly massive. They still fight in their three hosts and, mechanically they pretty much work the same. Because there were so many new units added, I'm going to break them up just a little bit here. And today I want to talk about Slaanesh's mortal followers on the whole to kind of paint a general picture of the mortal side of this faction, and then begin zooming in on what kind of character that life creates. As we dive into the champions of Slaanesh, at least the non-character ones, I've already done videos on Glutos Osolion, the Lord of Gluttony, and Sigvald the Magnificent, who of course deserved their own videos. And later, we'll round out the discussion with the various mortal units and see how they take excess and pain in new and unique ways. But as a whole, what are the Sybarites, which is kind of the name for the mortal elements of the Slaanesh army, the Hedonites of Slaanesh, specifically their mortal followers? Well, here's the thing. Followers of Slaanesh come from all walks of life. They could be tribal savages, noble rulers, predatory champions, or helpless refugees. And this is possible because Slaanesh is not empowered by a specific act or emotion. For example, like Khorne is all about rage and murder, and the act of bloodshed fuels him. But rather, Slaanesh is empowered to the degree at which people do or feel anything. And that makes him entirely unique within the pantheon of Chaos Gods. Because even Tzeentch, Khorne, and Nurgle are all aware that they themselves are pretty hyperfixated on one thing. But for the denizens of the mortal realms, the choice of paths that lead to Slaanesh are many. In a time of war and madness, great glory could be found in challenging and defeating a rival on the battlefield. But if you make that your life's mission to go around hunting Chaos Lords, you feed Slaanesh. Whispers of praise and applause and awe will begin to enter your ear. Soon it won't be enough to just slay champions, you need more. So you fight monsters, and then kings, and so on. Everything ramps up to a fever pitch. Now that the cities of Sigmar are more fully established, a great number of artisans and nobility have paved the way for damnation, becoming so obsessed with their work or their indulgences. So eager to be the best, or be seen, or be worshipped, or have power or clout, that a great resurgence of Slaanesh devotees has appeared. It can be in any city, any tribe, any group, or industry. And while all of these desires may start innocently or even altruistically enough, it's the insatiable hunger that drives you to more. More drugs, more music, more food, more battle, more indulgences, more glory, and so on. Until you can no longer conceal this internal desire and fixation, and when it's unveiled to the world, it usually comes out as something truly horrific, or like a demonic outbreak or something like that. While every mortal who chooses the path to glory of Slaanesh has their own story, filled with malice and tragedy in equal measure, there are a few chosen who have been raised amongst the rest. Whether they were open to obsessing with a greater number of things, and pleasing Slaanesh therefore, or just their way to the top was earned fair and square. They're bigger, they're badder, might makes right. These champions of depravity are an incredible presence on the battlefield. The earth cringes under their feet as the aura of hate and debauchery exudes out from them, and they lead the Dark Prince's armies to war, alongside, of course, the demons of Slaanesh. So now we're going to transition to talking about the leaders of these mortal units, and first up are the Lords of Pain, and that title does not disappoint. Now there are a lot of different kinds of Slaanesh champions, from Chaos Lords marked with Slaanesh, where it's sort of like an homage or maybe a pledge in the moment before a battle, to a full-blown Slaanesh sycophant. And generally, all of these heroes favor one obsession over the others. Maybe it's food, skill with a blade, territory conquered, and so on. And oftentimes, these obsessions reflect one of the great trials of Slanesh's palace. But one personality type rises to the top. Lords of Pain are champions that have sought out the most extreme emotion and sensation that they can, good and bad. Everything from the highest drug ecstasy to mortal wounds where their lives are hanging on by a thread. Joy and depression, rejoicing and mourning, exultation and sorrow. Literally anything except contentment. And they've pursued those extremes in a number of areas, like we've been listing this whole time, but over the course of all of these endeavors, the champion has inadvertently become numb to the very sensations they seek. All the physical and emotional sensations they feel work like a drug for them. The more you do it, the more kind of numb you become to it, and so then more you need. What makes a Lord of Pain who they are is that they've so desensitized themselves through lifetimes of pain and ecstasy that only the most intense combat can stir their emotions, which is a unique kind of hell. Because they live their lives essentially numb and feel devoid of meaning unless they are experiencing or delivering pain. And that's pain in huge quantities. And it's this ability, or I suppose this curse, that makes them so incredible as battlefield leaders, because they have a deeply personal interest in feeling anything, right? They look for spots in the combat where they can deliver the most pain, or they can receive as much as possible without actually dying. And so these guys march into war wearing hardly any armor, so he can feel every nick and scrape and nudge, picks out the thickest combats, or maybe the weakest enemy if he wants to be an absolute blender, and just pile drives his troops right into there. Now the second hero I want to talk about is the Shard Speaker, and this one I find incredibly interesting, and here's the basic premise for you. Deep in Slanesh's slice of the realm of chaos, there exists a place called the Temple of Twisted Mirrors. It's this labyrinthian maze of such complexity that it gives Tzeentch a run for his money on being beyond reason. And in this place, souls would be tempted. They'd walk into the temple, and it's essentially like a series of funhouse mirrors that either lead to false corridors of a maze or reflect your deepest desires back to you. They aren't necessarily untrue reflections, but they're exaggerated. And to stare at them too long is to lose yourself to the deepest and darkest parts of your desires. Well, at a certain point in time, Khorne sent a legion of demons to go and attack Slaanesh within the realm of chaos. And this temple of twisted mirrors was sacked and destroyed. The decor of a god shattered and laying on the ground. However, rather than being upset, Slaanesh followers had a moment of inspiration. The mirror fragments were sent to mortals. This means temptation was weaponized, and the mortals who bear the shards of these demonic mirrors are the Shard Speakers. They fit into a really cool role within the Hedonite warbands, acting as the mystics and the seers, the prophets and the council. They divine and reveal the deepest intents of mortals around them, and they take this gift to the battlefield. They'll basically follow behind a warband, and when the enemy champion appears, they reveal the mirror, and if the opponent is foolish enough to look into it at their own reflection, they damn themselves. No one can stand the unfettered darkness within the hearts of man. Entire units have halted charges, fled the battlefield, or just sat and cried until the Hedonites took them captive. Now I have a ton more to talk about when it comes to these specific types of heroes and Hedonite leaders in general, and we're going to cover that right after a quick word from this week's sponsor. Hey everyone, Doug here, and I want to talk to you about an incredible role-playing game, pen and paper style, that can be played in a group or solo. Legendary Kingdoms is an expansive setting, complete with combat, magic, mystery, and adventure, all in an easy-to-understand choose-your-own-adventure format. Imagine like Game of Thrones, but without the dumpster fire ending. This series sees you take control of 4 heroes as you explore an expansive fantasy world, with real, tangible consequences for your decisions. You got side quests and more. Illustrated by legendary comic book artist Robin Smith, known for his amazing work on the Judge Dredd series back in the day. The first book in this series is already out now, and the second is just being released on Kickstarter. But they each stand alone, so you don't need one before the other, because they're all kind of based around a specific region. This means you have a story built with your own custom heroes and their own interactions and their own decisions with consequences, and you can go from region to region, book to book in any order. If you want to give the game system a try for free, head to the link in the description below, because the awesome folks at Spider-Mind Games published a completely free version so you can get a taste of exactly what this format offers. And if you like it, you can take the exact characters that you made in this free version and move them into the full books. Now, links for the Legendary Kingdoms Kickstarter for Volume 2, as well as where to get the free version of the original, are all in the description down below. If you wouldn't mind, please guys, help support me by supporting other awesome creators out there who are making these incredible games that are fun and so cool to do in this time where we're all kind of locked down and in. Role-playing games have taken on, I think, a new significance in the last year, maybe two, and honestly, there's nothing quite like this out there that I've seen. So go ahead and support these guys. It costs very little to have hours and hours of enjoyment in this fantasy setting. So anyway, thanks for listening. Now back to the show. And as I always do with these videos, we're going to come to the best part. Why is this cool, right? What makes the Slaanesh Mortal Leaders so awesome? So much. I can probably say this is the most excited I've been for a faction that doesn't interest me from a collecting standpoint, but lore-wise, I'm loving all of it. I said this about the first Disciples of Tzeentch book when that dropped, and I think it applies here as well, that I love this idea that as society and order are rebuilding, as far as they've come, they're still small, but they're growing, that the seeds of hope, which was how the cities of Sigmar were referred to, are also these perfect incubators for the worst things ever. That as societies evolve and we have great things like wealth and commerce and food and water, art, music, nobility, that in those successes are the seeds of evil. Every city of Sigmar can and may have a Slaanesh cult, a group of people connected by their intense obsession over a single thing. And I'm going to rapid fire a few here. So we have the classics, right? Drug dens, noble courts with their intrigue and politicking, champions that need to prove themselves, and so on. But specifically, we have things like a massive concert hall that's mentioned in the city of Hallowheart, a highly competitive aerial race in Tempest's Eye, fine craftsmen from Akshi and Chaman that use Realmstone and precious jewels, big game hunters in Gur. All of these things, they're mentioned in the lore, but they're perfect incubators for someone to take way too far. And all of them are so freaking cool. I want a book about all of them, right? Each one is a starting point for Slaanesh to whisper in your ear. Maybe the racing consumes your life, so you tap into forbidden power to increase your speed or kind of sabotage your opponents. Or you become over-the-top intense about crafting the perfect weapon or statue. Maybe you tire of beast hunting in Gur and begin hunting the most dangerous game of all, men. All of these things are wonderful expressions of humanity and society as a whole, and ultimately what the Pantheon is fighting for, right? The freedom of mortals to enjoy these things. But they are also tools of the enemy, and that's what makes chaos, Slaanesh specifically, so insidious. Now, as for these heroes, these paragons of excess, I think they do a great job of taking sometimes lofty descriptions of Slaanesh and making them tangible, right? The Lord of Pain is a perfect example. Blending, a personal search for sensation with how an army functions. He's just a dude that's been a servant of Slaanesh for such a long time. He's been everywhere, done it all, has the t-shirts, but having done all that to its most extreme, he is personally numb to sensation and seeks it out anywhere he can find it just to feel something. But in a weird way, that lends itself to his battlefield tactics, as he plunges into the thickest combats, essentially looking for the biggest bully in the yard and clocking him down. And honestly, from a battlefield kind of perspective, the Lord of Pain is either going to die or he's going to take out the biggest, baddest enemy unit. So that's a win, because if he brings his enemy down, that's awesome. The rest of the opponent should crumple like paper. Again, his personal quest, his selfish desire for any sort of feeling, lends itself to the battlefield. he won't turn down a challenge. Now, as for the Shard Speaker, the first time I read through the lore, I felt like they didn't fit, right? They're kind of this mage class, but I guess I was a bit taken back by the restraint the author used, right? They weren't, written to be these all-consuming presence on the battlefield like most heroes are. Instead, we have a cross, in my mind at least, between a Blood Secrator and a Chaos Sorcerer. The sorcerer part is pretty clear, right? They're magic wielders, mystic, shaman, and so on. But the reason I bring up the Blood Secrator is the banner. If you don't know, mortals have to go on this epic quest to the realm of Khorne and survive the trip to claim a Blood Secrator totem that is personally formed by Khorne. And it's not so much how the Shard Speaker gets the mirror that reminds me of this, it's more the concept of taking an item that should not exist in our real world, right? The totems of the Blood Secrators are a demon thing that a mortal can carry. In the same way, these mirrors are part of an impossible building that existed within the realm of chaos. It shouldn't be in the realms. Both of these artifacts bring a slice of hell with them into reality, and I'm just enamored with that concept. A mortal carrying a piece of unreality with them is so cool. But friends, those are just my thoughts. Again, this was the introduction to the mortal units in general, and then also focusing on the 2 new hero units we got with this book. But we're going to cover the other units that we got here in the next video. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. I really actually want to hear what are some lore ideas you would have for the Shard Speaker. For some reason, it just really interested me as a hero option, more so than the others. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, so let them know in the comments down below. I'll catch you there and we'll keep the conversation going. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.